He installed hidden cameras to catch her stealing. Instead, what he saw made him drop to his knees and weep in his own hallway. Nobody expected a billionaire to end up on the floor of his own mansion, sobbing over grainy security footage of his maid. But that's exactly what happened to Austin Derrick. And by the end of that week, everything he thought he understood about family, about trust, about the woman he had almost fired, would be turned completely upside down. My name isn't important yet. What matters is what happened inside that house, and what one woman did for 3 babies that weren't even hers. Quick thing before we go further. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now for you. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because you are not ready for this one. Now let's get into it. Austin Derrick owned one of the largest shipping companies on the West Coast, headquartered out of Los Angeles, with warehouses stretching from California down through Texas. He had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes, a mansion with 11 bedrooms, and 3 baby girls who needed him more than any business deal ever could. His wife had died giving birth to the triplets 8 months earlier. Complications nobody saw coming. A healthy pregnancy turned tragedy in the space of one single night. Austin was left holding 3 newborn daughters and a grief so heavy he could barely get out of bed most mornings, let alone care for 3 infants who cried in shifts around the clock. He hired a maid named Christine Simmons through an agency 2 months after the funeral, mostly to help keep the house running, while a rotating team of nannies handled the babies. Christine was 53 years old, quiet, steady, the kind of woman who moved through a room like she'd been taking care of people her whole life, because she had. Austin barely noticed her at first. He was drowning in grief and business calls, and Christine simply became part of the background of his house, folding laundry, scrubbing floors, disappearing into rooms before he even walked in. Then, 3 weeks in, his head of household staff came to him with concern that made his blood run cold. "Sir," she said carefully, standing in his office doorway, "I think you should check the nursery cameras. Money's gone missing from the petty cash drawer twice now, and Christine's the only one with access during those hours." Austin felt his jaw tighten. He had cameras installed throughout the house after the triplets were born, mostly for safety, rarely checked unless something fell off. That night, he pulled up 2 weeks of footage from the nursery camera, expecting to catch a woman stealing from a grieving man's house. What he saw instead stopped his breath completely. It was almost midnight in the footage, time stamped from 4 nights earlier. The nanny on shift had apparently stepped out, and Christine was standing at the nursery door in her own clothes, not a uniform, like she'd come back after a shift had already ended. She walked in quietly and picked up the middle triplet, Ivy, who was crying softly in her crib, and settled into the rocking chair by the window. Austin watched frozen as Christine began to hum. Not just hum, but sing, low and soft, a lullaby he didn't recognize, her voice cracking with something that sounded like old, worn grief. "I see you, baby girl," she whispered between verses, rocking slowly. "I know you're missing something you don't even have words for yet. I know that feeling. Lost my own baby girl 30 years ago, and some nights the missing just gets loud again, don't it? But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere tonight." Austin sat there in his office chair, hand pressed against his mouth, watching a woman he barely knew pour out grief he never once asked about, comforting his daughter with a tenderness that hollowed out his chest. He kept watching. Night after night, the footage showed the same thing. Christine coming back after her paid hours ended, unpaid, unasked, sitting with whichever triplet was struggling most that night, singing, whispering, rubbing tiny backs until breathing steadied into sleep. One night, the footage showed her sitting with all 3 of them somehow balanced across her lap and shoulder, rocking gently while she talked to them like they could understand every word. "Your daddy loves you more than he even knows how to say right now," she murmured. Grief does that to a person, steals their words right out their mouth. But it doesn't mean the love ain't there. You just watch. One day he's going to find his way back to you 3. And when he does, don't you dare let him carry all that guilt about the days he was too broken to hold you close. You hear me? None of that's his fault. Austin paused the footage right there, his hands shaking, and for the first time since the funeral, he let himself cry the way he'd been avoiding for 8 months straight. The next morning, he confronted the head of household staff first, not Christine. Where exactly did this accusation about missing money come from? He asked, his voice sharper than he intended. The woman shifted uncomfortably. I just noticed the drawer was short a few times. Sir, I assumed. Austin pulled the security footage from the hallway camera near the office, the one nobody usually remembered was there, and found his answer within minutes. It wasn't Christine at all. It was the head of staff herself, pocketing small amounts here and there over several weeks, banking on the fact that a new, quiet maid would make an easy scapegoat if anyone noticed. He fired her that same afternoon, escorted her out himself, something he had never bothered doing for any employee before. Then he found Christine in the kitchen, wiping down counters that were already spotless, and for the first time since she started working there, he actually looked at her, really looked, instead of walking past. Christine, he said, and she turned, wiping her hands on her apron, waiting. Yes, sir? Can we talk? He gestured toward the small table by the window, and she hesitated only a moment before sitting down across from him. I saw the nursery footage. He admitted quietly. All of it. The nights you came back after your shift ended. The things you said to my daughters. Christine's face went still, something like embarrassment flickering across her features. Sir, I hope that wasn't out of line. I couldn't stand hearing them cry alone in there some nights, and the nanny schedule doesn't always. You lost a daughter, Austin interrupted gently, his voice thick. You never told me that. Christine was quiet for a long moment, her eyes drifting toward the window. 31 years ago, she finally said, My Patricia, she was born too early, only lived 4 days. I was 19 years old and didn't know the first thing about how to survive losing a child that young. Nobody really tells you grief like that doesn't leave. It just changes shape over the years. Austin felt his own eyes burning. I'm so sorry, he whispered. Christine reached across the table, and for a woman who had spent weeks keeping careful, respectful distance from her employer, the gesture surprised them both. I see you grieving your wife every single day in this house, Mr. Derrick, she said softly. I see it in the way you walk past that nursery, like it hurts just to look inside. I wasn't trying to overstep. I just know what it feels like when love and grief get so tangled up together, you can't tell which one is bigger anymore. Those babies needed somebody to hold that space until you found your way back to them. That's all I was trying to do. Something shifted in Austin that afternoon, something that had been frozen solid since the night his wife died. He asked Christine if she would consider a different role in the house, not as a maid, but as someone who helped him learn how to actually parent 3 daughters he loved desperately, but didn't yet know how to reach. She agreed, though not without teasing him gently for taking 8 months and a security camera to finally ask for help. Over the following months, Christine taught Austin things no business degree or inherited fortune had ever prepared him for. How to tell the triplets apart by their different cries. How Ivy needed extra rocking while Nora settled faster with quiet humming, and June wanted nothing but skin-to-skin contact to calm down completely. How grief and love could exist in the same room without canceling each other out. How showing up broken was still showing up, and that was enough for 3 little girls who just needed their father present, imperfect and trying. Austin started coming home earlier, started sitting in that nursery himself instead of avoiding it, started learning his daughters' faces instead of relying entirely on staff to raise them while he buried himself in work as a way of running from grief he didn't know how to face. Christine never asked for anything beyond her regular pay, even after everything she had given those babies during nights nobody was watching or paying her for. But Austin insisted on raising her salary significantly, insisted on giving her real time off, insisted she stop hiding unpaid overtime like it was something she needed permission to offer. One evening, almost a year after that first night, he watched the security footage. Austin found Christine in the nursery again, this time with him standing right beside her instead of hiding behind a screen down the hall. All 3 girls were finally walking now, wobbling and giggling, chasing each other around the room, while Christine watched with the same soft warmth she'd carried since the very beginning. Thank you, Austin said quietly, watching his daughters play. For everything you gave them before I knew how to give it myself. Christine smiled, watching June stumble and catch herself against the crib rail, laughing instead of crying. Wasn't nothing but love, Mr. Derrick, she said simply, That's the one thing that never runs out, no matter how much of it you give away. 2 years later, Christine stood beside Austin at his daughter's 3rd birthday party. Not as staff working the event, but as an honored guest, some of the girls now called Grandma Chris without anybody ever having to teach them the word. She had become family in every sense that mattered, woven so completely into their lives that nobody in that house could remember or wanted to remember what things looked like before her. Austin built a small memorial garden behind the mansion that year, a quiet corner with a single bench and a small plaque bearing 2 names, his wife, and a little girl named Patricia, who lived only 4 days but whose memory had somehow found its way into raising 3 other little girls decades later, through a grief so deep it turned into the gentlest kind of love imaginable. Some nights, Austin still watches old footage from that first year, not out of suspicion anymore, but because it reminds him of exactly how close he came to missing the most important person who ever walked into his broken home. A woman the world might have looked past, might have assumed was just hired help, who instead turned out to be the reason his daughters grew up knowing love even during the months their father was too shattered to show it himself. If this story touched your heart, take a second to hit that like button before you go. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories like this one, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that the people we overlook are often the ones holding everything together. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever misjudged someone before you really knew their story? I'll see you in the next story.